A very pleasant morning to you across West Africa and to a global audience. You are tuning in to 94.9 FM, West Africa Democracy Radio here in Dakar, and we are streaming live on Facebook and YouTube. I am Imo Adet, and it's a great pleasure to bring you another edition of this program, Citizens Hour, where we put the people first and your democracy, citizen engaging and current affairs radio show. I am Imo Adet once again, and I do have Usman Umar joining us from Abuja. Usman.
Yes, and from a very bright, busy Saturday morning here in Abuja, Nigeria's capital. As Imo have said, my name is Usman Umar. It's good to have you with us. Whether you are sipping your morning coffee, driving in your car, in the bustling city, or you just tuned in from a quiet rural community, anywhere you're listening to us from the part of the globe, we're glad to have you join us in this conversation. Today, we are navigating the complex intersections of economic hope and social friction.
That's
Imo.
right, Usman. Well, we have 90 minutes to unpack two critical themes: the reality of economic gains for the average African citizen from the Africa Forward Conference and the deeply troubling rise of xenophobia within our borders. It's an ambitious one, if you ask us, but that's why we do have our experts here to break all of this down. Usman.
Of course, now when we talk about Africa Forward Summit, which just concluded in Kenya, we often hear the high-level language of economists. They talk about GDP growth, macro stability, and trade agreements, Imo. But of course, for the ordinary citizen on the street, the real question always is, does this put food on my table? Imo.
Well, very true. Well, to help us break those jargons which you have mentioned and look at the actual impact on the ground, we have been joined here in the studio by Mr. Desiree Sogbavi. He is the Advocacy Advisor for Africa at the Open Society Foundation's OSF. Mr. Desiree, thank you so much for finding time to join us in the studio.
Thank you. Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Indeed, and we also have joining us from Malawi, Dr. Donatius Patera. He is a renowned regional economist. Dr. Patera, thank you so much for your time, and welcome to the program again.
Thank you very much for inviting me into this program.
Indeed, great to have you. Welcome.
You're welcome. You're welcome, gentlemen, to the program. Dr. Patera, let me start with you. We want to start with the pocketbook reality. We hear about massive trade potential under the AFCFTA, otherwise known as AFTA. But how do we ensure that a trader in a local market somewhere in Kano in Nigeria or a farmer in rural Senegal actually feels these gains, so to speak?
Yeah, I understand. We have, as Africa, we have been mourning for a long time in terms of how the local or small traders are benefiting from these issues of trade where we have been touting. And for a long time, there's a lot of meetings have been held, a lot of caucus, workshops, seminars across Africa, and sometimes we have even exported our conferences to other regions to ensure that we make Africa better. But for me, what I am looking forward is now looking at the just ended summit. If we could take the idea of Africa forward for citizens and making sure that these citizens benefit, I feel the most important thing is to ensure that we have got an investment-led growth desire as a continent, so that these can have the opportunity to create more jobs for Africa. And if you have that interest of now investing in investment-led growth architecture and creating more jobs, it means our purchasing power as a continent will go up. That's an automatic thing that we need to do as Africa. But mostly, whatsoever we discuss in these conferences and workshops and seminars, sometimes exporting and even importing people to come and talk to us about how we can live better, has not even changed Africa. We need to have an investment mind so that we can create local jobs and also increase our purchasing power.
Indeed. Well, Usman, let me take it over from here and bring on board Mr. Desiree in the studio. So you were at the forum, and prior to that, you in your usual style, you put out a column on that. Did you think, or do you think that forum met your expectations vis-a-vis what you wrote?
Thank you for having me again. I haven't been in the forum, but I follow very closely, and I wrote, some of the idea that I have in terms of expectation, for that forum. I think we face two reality, for that forum. First, the format. The format look very funny. You have one country, France, and then you have Africa. Of course, not all African countries came systematically, but when we talk about 30 head of state and government, it's actually important because...
So maybe you can move closer to the mic for
Yeah.
our radio audience, please.
Because even for my observations of meetings organized by the African Union itself, sometimes it's very difficult even to have 30 head of states coming to their own meeting. But then you see them in big number in Nairobi. You see them in even bigger number in Beijing, in bigger number in Tokyo.
Yeah.
Then you ask yourself, what does this, look like? So we have this Africa plus one summit. So that is a bit funny for an African citizen perspective. However, the second part of the dilemma is that Africa still needs cooperation. Africa still needs a lot to learn and take from countries who are very advanced. Africa need more know-how. Africa need a lot of investment. So we found ourselves in this dilemma. That's why, for me, I don't shoot on that summit.
Yeah.
I think if there's anything Africa can take out of it, it is fine. And what can be positive for me is that the narrative starts changing. I came from a France-Afrique framework. I grew up in a France-Afrique context, and I see what those kind of summits used to be a few years back. It was, the announcement is normally AIDS related.
Yes.
At this time, we're talking about investment. We're talking about a win-win situation. So I'll say, yes, we have seen political narrative changing. We have seen discussions that focus on some of the most, pressing issue that the continent has now. Call it cost of capital, for example.
Okay.
Call it the need for heavy investment. Call it industrialization in the continent, so that the continent does not continue just selling raw materials cheap. So I see a few good steps, but maybe to finish, nothing ever changed in people's life because something was announced. We need to see how far these announcements will be realized.
Indeed. Dr. Patera, let's talk about the 23 billion euro investment announcement, which Mr. Darius just mentioned now. And he also talked about the situation where one country in Europe and over 30 African countries meeting. Is this a form of rebranding of old partnership where instead of our leaders going to France, the leader is coming to Africa? What do you make out of this and the announcement?
I think Africa, we need to learn. Trusting a lion to take care of your goats, and you think that the lion has changed, is something that as Africa we feel we are not ready to learn. I think that's my fear, because the issue is now they're trying to look at rebrand. Say there's from audit partnership now to new partnership, but now the question here is this a genuine shift where of the 23 billion that has been announced will foster in the local industrialization, trying to invest in the industries in Africa, or it is another way of now giving an opportunity for the Western countries to extract more from Africa. Because sometimes the content that we get from these conferences and whatsoever is discussed behind the conferences can be different. So that's the biggest question to me. Are we really trusting the partner that betrayed us before and we feel this person has changed? This is the question that I have.
Usman.
a very germane question, if you ask me. And I think that's the question on the lip of every discerning African at this time. But let me come to the studio to Mr. Sobavi. Of course, the French president has already mentioned, of course, has announced a 23 billion euro investment. And the question that we're asking, because for us at West Africa Democracy Radio, it's always about the ordinary person in the street. Do you see this investment trickling down to local businesses in our rural communities, especially given that part of the resolutions reached was that this time around the approaches will be different in the sense that monies will be tied to specific projects that will be monitored going forward. So my question again is to Mr. Asubavi, do you see this 23 billion euro trickling down to the local businesses in our rural areas?
It's going to depend on many things. First, again, we are used to big announcements of money, be it pledging conferences, to stop a humanitarian disaster, or to go around a conflict going on, or even meetings like this where investment have been announced. So we're very used to that. So I won't say a big yes right now because nothing sure that is going to happen. We have here a lot of pledges. Second, we also need to go to the detail because this is where the devil resides. How much of this money are new money? Because, partners have a way of dealing with it. Sometimes they will pledge money.
When you say new money, I would like you to break that down.
Most of the time when they pledge money, they take into consideration the
previous
pledge happened 2 years, that
Okay.
happened 2 years or 3 years ago. And then they have a scenario to mix them together. Just to make a buzz that we have announced big money. So we need to go through the detail to see how much of this is new money actually. And then the implementation scenario. Again, I don't see any change in people's life or even local business in the next 1 or 2 years. Now, if they're serious about those investments, we're going to see how much of our local business are giving contracts through those projects. Because sometimes investment happen, but most of the contracts are taken by big Western companies.
Yeah.
So this is why I really believe that the post-Nairobi implementation needs to take in considerations kind of tracker. We basically need to put a tracker down this time to see in Nairobi in this date, you mentioned this investment. 6 months after what had happened, who have been the beneficiary and how the impact can be felt. So maybe in the medium term, yes, but those partners, and I'm glad this summit, unlike the previous France-Africa summit, have gathered more than politicians. Now we have seen businesses. This is the first time we have seen, the huge participation of the private sectors. We have seen starters. We have seen young people. We have seen a cultural aspect of it. So this is the first time we have seen a kind of multi-dimensional discussion, which may help basically to track the implementation of that. Now, for me, it's going to be a wait and see. Let's say 1 anniversary of this Nairobi summit, what has happened in concrete term, then we can say, okay, we have seen some steps. But for the moment, I'll be very cautious about how life can change out of this.
Well, Dr. Patera, do I agree with Mr. Asobgavi that it's a wait and see scenario at this point?
Yeah, what happens behind the curtains after the summit is what matters most. That gives a direction of these promises. Because when you're looking at a person on the street in Malawi, of Malawi, Senegal, or Abuja, wherever, we are looking at if these monies are going down to the people. We need to see now in terms of now supporting their businesses and also ensuring that there's job creation. And if you look at this, I can say agriculture, for example, in Africa, these are labor-intensive industries and energy sector. And these are the areas where these resources have to go. And I'm looking at now this huge investment. And if it trickles down to those people, I'll be a happy person.
Quite.
Mm.
Usman.
It's actually something that will gladden the heart of every African to, for the first time, see that these big numbers, these big monies, promised in summits such as this actually goes down to where they are most needed. And to continue this conversation, of course, our questions are always about the benefit to the ordinary citizen on the streets. But I want to ask Mr. Shogbavi in the studio that, of course, there have been calls for African-owned credit rating agencies that can realistically change how Africa is perceived by investors, because most of these monies promised are always coming from investors. What would it take for such an institution to gain global credibility and trust?
I'm glad you mentioned the issue of the credit rating agency that the continent want to create. Yeah. This has been a long-term discussions, and now I know from the beginning many people think that it may not have any impact. Of course, the credit rating agencies that exist now are all based in Western countries, and they are more or less, a private setting, which kind of analysis that donors, those who are in the borrowing market, use, for their decision to lend money or not to a country. So this is how it works. How much an African credit rating agency will influence the decision of donors, I think, is not going to come to replace what is on the market. Okay. But the most important thing is that an African credit rating agency can change the game if first it is serious. It has a compelling analysis. It's not to set up, an agency that just give good grade to African countries, but it's very serious about the way they analyze using different approaches.
Do you think it will even be accepted by the people?
I think yes. It's more and more being accepted. It's strongly supported by the African Development Bank. And in various discussions, people again are saying, let's wait and see how it's going to show up. But the bottom line is that we all agree that the way African countries are rated by those existing agencies are completely unfair. There are many situations in which you see the same situation in Africa and in other regions of the world, but the rating affects more Africa than everywhere else. So in reality, Africa end up paying more than double of what they borrow. And this means less hospital in our countries, less schools, because we are paying more service there because of the cost of the capital. Can you imagine that African countries, when they go to borrow in the same, with the same donor, pay 2 to 3 times more than even developed countries?
And that's why the debt burden is far increasing on the continent.
Yeah, it's like the system is set up for Africa never to get out of it. So an African credit rating agency can show to the whole world that what we have been seeing over years not true, can maybe try to have a different approach in calculating the risk over many years. And this might actually open eyes to some people and expose some of the injustice that we are seeing in the financial market. So I believe we need to support it, but it has to be serious. It had to be compelling, so that the objective assigned to it are met.
Well, just to follow up, Usman, follow up to
I wanted to actually have Dr. Patera's view on this.
Yes, same here. But I want him to maybe additionally tell us how these rating agencies can be accepted globally, aside the Moody's, which we know. Dr. Donatius, are you there?
Yes, I can hear you. Of course, my apologies. I think I have got a problem with the video. But what I want to say is that when you're talking about these credit standards, there are three issues that we need to consider. The first thing is now the transparency of the information in terms of the credibility situation. How transparent are we in terms of the data that we are using, the standard of the data? At the same time, also where this institution is matters most. As my colleague has just said, sometimes the standards can be put on the roof so that these African countries cannot even reach. So they give you some standards that you may consider, say, no, we shouldn't proceed with this. But the issues of data transparency is also critical. But I'm very sure that if we can put much efforts, our institutions can be credited and also given good ratings. Apart from that, it was also good for if you want to some investors to come, that they can trust our credibility based on the rating that we may have. So to me, I feel we need, as Africa, we need to support these institutions. We need to support the drive that I've heard from for the workshop and the seminar. We need to applaud that and ensure that this really happens within a short time.
But do you think? Just go ahead.
I believe,
Yes.
and we have to keep repeating this. The creation of the African Credit Rating Agency will put a lot of pressure on our leadership as well, because today they are the ones shouting that we are being cheated, we are being unjustly charged, higher interest rate and so. But some of the elements in the analysis used by the current agencies are true. Some of the elements are true. Call it the integrity of our justice system, for example. Now, if your justice system is not okay, who wants to put his money there?
Very
It
true.
is a risk.
Yes.
Exactly.
Now, the issue of peace and security, the issue of democracy and wellness and all those things, and also the seriousness of our statistic agencies. I've had a chance to talk to a number of experts on the issue, and they say, you go to many African countries, statistic agency, the only data you get are 5 years old, 10 years old data. But people are being paid every month to work on those issues. Now, if you let 10 years old data be used for analysis, you are losing. So I think when we have this agency, it's going to reveal some of the issues that we need to fix ourselves in the continent. How much we need to be serious so that those data, when they use it, it show the true reality of who we are.
Does that include lowering the borrowing costs by government?
Yeah, basically, when the analysis show that the country is stable enough, then those who have money to lend us will say, okay, when I lend you my money, there are more chance for me to be paid back.
Yes.
That's how make the interest up or down. So we need to demonstrate that the rate we are having now is unfair, but it can't just be by speech. It has to be with realities, with data.
Exactly. Exactly. Mr. Ashogbavi, what you mentioned, especially about some of the indices, talking about the justice system of most African countries, talking about the state of security,
governance.
when Dr. Patera was speaking earlier, I wanted to actually ask that, and I'm glad that you have actually confirmed that some of these indices are actually are real.
Yeah.
And I'm going forward, because here we are talking about the goodness that an agency like this will bring to the continent. But on the other hand, you have this mutual suspicion. Here we are, even just to have one currency for the continent, we're still having issues around some countries having problems accepting the standards and all of that. So how do we move on from the level of speeches to concrete actions that will bring this to fruition?
That is for me?
For who?
Yes,
Usman?
that is for you, sir.
Okay.
Yes,
I'm glad to take
yes,
it.
go.
I think we are facing the realities now, and I agree with you that the time of speeches is over. We are facing the reality in the life of our people. If you look at the policy framework of the continent, I don't think any other geographic region has more better policy than ours. We do have a lot of policy. If we can only make step in implementing those policy, Africa will advance. Now we have the reality. We have our people suffering. Even the issue of peace and security we are having now is not just because of political power. When you go to some of the young people in Somalia, in the Horn of Africa in general, or even the Sahel, you ask them, why are they fighting? Like, those young people are not actually fighting to come to power. They'll tell you, whether I fight or not, I have the same result. So basically, I rather fight with the chance to gain something, because if I don't fight, corruption is killing me, my family, and everything. So this is linked to governance, and not only the gain or the willingness to get to power. So, and our leadership is looking at all those things. So it is important for us now to realize that speech are over, and we have to make some space to realize what we have decided, and we have very good policy. We just need to implement them.
Indeed. Dr. Batara, let's come to you. What does economic sovereignty really looks like? Can we get to that point where African countries wouldn't need to be having, in as much as cooperation and partnership is important, where we can say, yes, we are the ones having more of the say in summits like this? Can we get to that point of time on the continent?
Well, it's up to us. As my colleague has said, the issue of what we want to be depends on our ability to change from the narrative and being action-oriented. We have the best documents, best policies. And if you compare some of the policies that we have in Africa with even in the Western countries, maybe Africa can be the best, can beat almost all of the continents. But the question is, what do we do on the ground? Of course, the issues of now, looking at the issues of sovereignty and how we can ensure that we do better, it is possible for African nations to do that. And we have got, we can even ensure that all the debts that we have, they are managed properly. And this is the situation in which leadership is very critical. What we need in Africa is the proper leadership that can think, act, and ensure that this continent is moving forward. Each country has got now the opportunity to move forward. If all these narratives that we have in these conferences are put across, and with a very genuine mind, definitely we should see progress in Africa. And then we can also look at the issues of now high interest, all these songs that we are singing every day about IMF or World Bank. These things can be sorted out if we make a very tremendous progress in terms of our actions.
Okay, now, Dr. Sogbavi, Mr. Sogbavi, very soon to be doctor, I want to now, looking at the reality of the continent, particularly the West African sub-region, which areas do you think that some of these investments that are being proposed should come into? Of course, you have a budding and growing artificial intelligence sector. You also have the agri sector. There's also the energy sector and a number of other very key sectors. But from your own understanding of the continent and where we need to be, say, in the next 5 years, which areas do you think that these investments should be more focused on?
Okay, thank you for that. First, thematic area. And one of the positive things I see to the outcome of the summit is that it focus on some of the most important things that the continent need now. And I'll start from energy. We're talking about the need for industrialization within the continent so that we gradually stop selling our raw material for cheap. We need to start transforming, and we can't do that without energy. Now, even before we talk about energy to transform, even energy to have a decent life. Yeah. You have 600 million African in the dark, and our continent is producing uranium that other countries are taking, to enlighten their own people. So, if, for example, in the next 1 to 2 years, some of the area of the continent that are still dark get some energy, even using green mean, to have those energy, which we do have in Africa. If we can have a bit of those transfer technology using some of the existing mineral we have, to improve the energy sector of the continent. I think that would be something in terms of thematic. Now, geographically, I look at area where you have, I would say in quote, the most miserable people within the continent. You mentioned West Africa. Look at the Sahel with a huge amount of young people who have energy, who really want to make it, they really want to participate in it. We should forget about those sanctions that exist through regional organizations and look at the people who are there. So I think if there's a way, for us to create a situation where we improve the life of those people, give them a chance to be better educated. It's very interesting always when we are mentioning African potential, and President Macron also repeat it. We have the youngest populations, and Africa is now between 1.4 to 1.5 billion. But you can't do anything with people who are not trained, who don't have any education, who are not in good health. So we can't be talking about demography if that demography cannot give us any dividend, because the number doesn't matter. It's the quality of people, is the reality of what those people can produce. If you have people who have no training, who have
no basic education,
sick, basic education. So for us to take advantage out of the demographic dividend, we need to prepare, and we are not doing that enough now. So energy is one. AI, if it is needed to use, to be used in our everyday life, which is a reality now, if investment can be made, not using just our data or just use our space as a data center, with us not having any control over it. So those need to be looked at clearly. So the most vulnerable population need to be put in the equation so that we can see some quick wins in the next 1 to 2 years. Then we can believe that something may happen from the Africa Forward Summit.
Unfortunately, the population and what you just mentioned were not really part of that discussion at the summit. It was more of investing in this sector, investing in that sector, and who can get what, and how much money will be coming to my country. Where does that now place this large population of youngsters, which you have mentioned, like Usman said, in the next 5 years? Because if these people are not trained, then what is the essence of these investment and fundings which we are getting?
I think that's a good point you raise, and I believe that's why even when we are saying that development or creation of wealth come mostly with private sectors, it's important for us to highlight the fundamental role the state needs to play. The state has a role to put regulations that allow a fair sharing of the wealth that is generated. Because, if you lead the private sectors, they are just profit-oriented.
Yes.
So states have to play a big role in making sure that the most vulnerable parts of our regions are covered. And then the most important issue, are prioritized. So that's how state need to play, because it has the authority basically to do so. So it has to be, a collaboration, a partnership between private and public sector, and we wait to see what happens.
All right, Usman.
All right, let me go over to Dr. Bapera, because this conversation, as Mr. Ashogadi was talking about some of the areas that we actually need to focus on and why. A lot of things were just running across my mind, because first of all, we need unity of the continent to be able to harmonize some of its resources, and as it is today, of course we're going to be discussing as our next topic one of the very troubling issues on the continent, where Black Africans are being asked to leave a country within the continent itself, and that on its own, no matter the gains from summits such as the one we just concluded in Nairobi, what do we need to start doing, particularly looking at the role that AU is expected to play in driving forward some of the resolutions reached and some of the commitments made? On one hand, that is, I'm asking Dr. Patera, what role can the African Union play in ensuring the unification of the continent to be able to maximize the gains from summits such as this? And on the other hand, citizens themselves, looking towards the NGOs, what should we be doing at this point in order to maximize the benefit of summits such as this?
Yeah, thank you very much. What I need to say is, there are so many narratives about Africa, and one of the key issues now, the issues of unity, and we start even the name of our regional or the continent, it starts with African Union, but we are not united. That's the reality. So all these things that are happening is a sign that there's no unity, and there are so many issues that were put economically. They would say, for example, Malawi and Zambia, they say they are landlocked. They are locked. So technically, your mind is these countries, they've been blocked technically. But now the economists are coming, so no, these countries are not landlocked, they are land linked. They are linked by the land. So we start from there, understanding exactly what the potential for your country. And also looking at the reviewed comparative advantage. Each country has got a reviewed comparative advantage. They have got an advantage over other countries on some potential areas. Now, the African Union has the potential now to analyze, to come together with these leaders, putting them together and ensuring that they draft a better way of now nurturing the economic standard of this continent. And if you read African AU Agenda 2063, you're going to see very beautiful analysis on what the AU wants to see Africa by 2063. But how is that agenda going to be achieved if the continent is not united? If people are throwing stones on each other and even shedding blood on each other, on every person that we meet across, someone say this one is from this side, from this side, but yet that agenda is for Africa. So the issue here is now the issues of leadership. I still go back to leadership. Say, let us have now a proper leadership from the African Union going down into each country and ensuring that we have a proper direction of this continent, and these agenda that we are talking about, they can really be manifested. Without that, definitely we still have problems.
Well, Mr. Asukwe, what's your thought on that?
Yeah, I can only agree, with my colleague who just spoken. If there's anything like urgent for our continental body to do now is to find a way to consolidate our union. And we have reason to think so. Now, first the question is, do our partner want to see us working together and be strong? No. In fact, I have had a chance to attend many of those Africa Plus One meetings. You think that it's actually Africa going to speak. It's not actually true, because every country now try to push for its own little project, some little bridges per here, some small road per here. I have been in the US Africa summits. I'm so disappointed that there's no African common stand positions, no push for a strong project, a strong realization that everybody will benefit with. Now you see country be pushing for small projects. If you go to FOCAC or TCAD, is the same. Now, today you see many countries or regions are now rushing back to Africa, looking at material that they need for the green transitions. Europe already declared that by 2030 they're going to change all their car to
electronic cars, to green cars. Yes,
exactly. But what it takes to make that happen is to be found majority in Africa. And what are they doing? They're trying to negotiate individually with countries who do not have capacity to get better deal of what they have. This is the actual moment where Africa has to put itself together and make sure they're negotiating as a bloc that will profit the continent. And that is not yet happening. So basically, if I have to, push for something like strong within the African Union, is to see a way to consolidate our union. The project of the consolidation of the union have had a lot of step, but it never come together from Dr. Kwame Nkrumah's idea until the latest 2007, 2008 process that attempt to create a United States of Africa. Again, it failed again because some countries really don't want to be in. But if you analyze deeper, there's always a division that has something to do with some colonial legacy.
And in a way of rounding off this conversation, is that why we're still for dragging on the AfTA?
Yes. AfTA look very beautiful on paper, but there is a lot remain to be done for AfTA to be implementable. Let me just give you a few examples. The African Continental Free Trade area, the day it was the treaty was adopted, it was a package. There's a treaty on the free trade area itself. There was another treaty that ensure free movement of goods and people in the continent, because obviously you cannot trade if you can't move from a place to another.
Exactly.
Our country rushed to sign and ratify the free trade area, but the policy that will enable free trade, which is the free movement, nobody cares about it. I don't think we even reached 5 ratification of that. So are we really serious about the free trade area? It looks beautiful. It's still in the speeches. We see if it happen, we will gain so million, but we are not going ahead to open borders. Rather, you see 2 countries having agreement within there. How 2 countries, 3 countries are having agreement where we already have a continental framing? Why don't you just ratify it and make it happen? So those are the issues that we need to look at, if you really want to show our people that we are serious about our development.
Indeed. Well, your last thoughts, Dr. Patera, on this issue. I mean, I know I've brought in AfTA, but if you want to talk about it, it can take another hour. Let's have your closing remark on it, Dr. Patera.
Just a reminder to African leaders that there's no free lunch, and we need to be careful. There's no free lunch, and the more you get things that look so free, the more you risk putting this continent on a very dangerous path. But as Africa, we need to start believing in ourselves that we can do. We will have a lot of resistance, but it's a matter of persistence and actions that will make Africa a better continent. Despite all these pronouncements of huge sums of money, Africa can do it on its own. Thank you.
Indeed. Many thanks.
Note,
right, Usman, go ahead.
Of course, on this note, we have to thank our very distinguished guest, Dr. Donatius Pathera. He's a renowned regional economist, and Mr. Desire Asobbavi, Advocacy Advisor for Africa at the Open Society Foundation, otherwise known as OSF. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your insights on this very topic.
Thank you, Mr. Asobbavi, for being here in the studio.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you.
Please stay with us. We'll be right back with our second session.
Citizens Hour on West Africa Democracy Radio. It's your time to speak.
All right, welcome back. While we strive for economic integration, there is a shadow looming over the spirit of Pan-Africanism. We are seeing a rise in xenophobic sentiments and attacks against African nationals by their fellow Africans in South Africa.
It's a painful irony, Mo, isn't it?
It is.
We, of course, we talk about one Africa, yet we see othering, in quote, taking place in our own very neighborhoods. Now, joining us to look at the why and the how to stop this very negative trend, we have Dr. Seife Tiki Africano. He is African scholar and director of the Center for Governance and Inter-Africa Trade Studies. We're also being joined, I hope, by Mr. Kimani Maskani, a Pan-African activist and advocate with the Africans Rising movement. Of course, we have joining us from the beginning of the program, actually. I saw him all through the first segment, Honorable Daniel Nana Addo Kenneth. He is a member of Parliament for Okere constituency in Ghana. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
All right. Well, Honorable Kenneth, from a legislative perspective, how do we move beyond just condemning these acts to creating laws that protect the rights of every African national, regardless of which border they cross?
Yes. My greetings to your viewers and, of course, my constituents and my country. And we all are very worried about what is happening on the continent, particularly South Africa, which is a recent one. And like you rightly said, very, very conflicting and ironical situation where we're talking about integration, we're talking about borderless Africa, we're talking about even fair discussion, gains that we want to make as one continent. And we're having these issues. It's very worrying. But I think that it is not the first time it's happening. We've had similar cases in 2008, 94, when South Africa became, the center of development in terms of the progress that have made. A lot of migrants went there. We are having so many of these issues coming up. Issues of youth unemployment has become one of the major reasons that is being cited. I think that these issues come and keeps occurring because we are just looking at the naming and shaming and making just diplomatic condemnations. But going to the question, it's important for us to move away from just diplomatic condemnations. African Union have to have a framework that is going to check on xenophobic attacks. We need a framework that would put pressure on governments to enforce these laws that we have. They need to be binding agreements. And this binding agreement must have sanctions that will bite. And for me, I think that we just have to move away from these diplomatic condemnations. There needs to be a whole framework on the African continent spearheaded by AU and the various blocs. And these frameworks must be binding on us. There should also be a monitoring mechanism, on this framework. We don't just go do these condemnations, it calms down, and then a reoccurs again, because we don't have a binding monitoring mechanisms by the AU that is going to work. And these mechanisms, states must be held accountable. I don't see why governments should be left off the hook, because it's individual governments in individual countries that have to enforce the laws to make sure that foreigners are protected. There have to be a distinction between criminals and foreigners. There has to be a distinction between those who are illegal migrants and those who are legally residents within various African continent. And so for me, one, we need a framework, we need binding agreements, we need a monitoring mechanism, and at least the AU should be coming up with quarterly reports on xenophobic attacks across the continent so that this report will inform policy going forward.
All right. Thank you very much, Honorable. Before we have Dr. Seife join us again, because I think he's been off by network, but it's good to have you.
Sure.
Some of the reasons given by the protesters include issues around socioeconomic strain, that is blaming other nationals for the historic highs in domestic unemployment. They also talk about resource exhaustion, that is claiming that millions of undocumented immigrants are exploring free public infrastructure that South African government is providing. They're also talking about overcrowding in their classrooms and draining their health budgets. there is also the issue of rule of law, where they are accusing the state apparatus, particularly their Ministry of Home Affairs, of failing to police borders and manage undocumented entry, leading to vigilante groups to frame their actions as citizens assisting the law enforcement. Now, taking a look at the gamut of these reasons, is there actually a justification for citizens to be allowed? Because, like you said, government has a role to play. And for this protest to have lasted this long, especially this recent one, a lot of questions have been asked about whether actually the South African government is behind these protesters to continue with this citizen enforcement. Are these reasons enough for the citizens to be thrown on the streets to be identifying Black Africans that are not of South African origin to leave their country?
Well, in the first place, I don't think they are justifiable reasons at all. They are not. As much as there are some valid concerns, they are not justifiable for citizens to be chasing their fellow Black, country fellows, because these issues are more of government taking its time to look at the challenges that we have and solving them. It is not about citizens chasing the other citizens, because if you are looking, we want one Africa. Take MTN, take Dangote, take KGL from our own country. These are great African industries that are expanding across the country. Would we say that because we're unable to have a telecommunication powerhouse in Ghana, if MTN is working here and MTN is expanding and bringing the gains back home, are we going to collapse MTN because Ghanaians cannot produce a telecommunication powerhouse? Look at Ethiopian Airlines. Ethiopian Airlines is doing very well across the continent and moves all across, making all of us proud. Are we going to say that because some airlines have failed, we are not going to allow Ethiopian Airlines to operate within our region? No. So they are certainly not justifiable reasons. I think that the government of South Africa, looking at the length of the protest, is complicit. And I agree with people who may think that they are behind, because we heard campaign promises of how they are going to sanitize the people and make sure that they are giving jobs to their own people and talking about foreign. And sometimes, yes, we politicians and leaders also, the kind of things we say on campaign platforms before we become elected influences some of these actions. So it's also important for us to check what it is that we promised and assure our people. But for me, if the government was committed enough, if it was a political protest, it would have been nipped in the bud by now. If it was a political protest against the government, you would have seen a different approach. And so that is why I talk about the binding frameworks, binding agreements from the AU to make sure that these things are nipped in the bud. It could have been salvaged right from the beginning. Okay. Again, to solve this issue, we need to have a reorientation of our citizenship. It's important that we talk about integration. We talk about borderless Africa. We even talk about one currency. AFTA has come. The challenges that AFTA is facing is because we are not seeing Africa as one. We are seeing ourselves as individual countries, individual states, distinct from each other. So we don't talk Africa. We talk Ghana, we talk Nigeria, we talk Dakar, we talk Guinea, we talk Ethiopia. We don't talk Africa. So it's important that we start a reorientation of our citizens for them to understand that we are Africans. And so once we are Africans, any fellow country member is part of us, one of us. And it's so sad that we are being chased by our own Black country fellows. And I don't want to sound racist, but you can see the treatment of the other colors, other race, and that is very challenging. Looking at our own Black Africans and telling them to go back to their country and chasing them in the manner in which they are being chased. So beyond the enforcement and policies, it's important that we take a serious reorientation of our young generation to let them start thinking as Africa as one. Until we do that, we will still be segregating among ourselves and seeing ourselves as different people instead of one continent.
All right.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ibo. I think we have Dr.
Seife joining us.
TK Africano. He's online right now. Thank you very much for joining us, Doctor.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Doc.
Good
Thank you very
afternoon.
much. You're welcome. Thank you.
Well, it's good to have you.
It's good to have you, Doc. Imo.
Man, same here.
Yes, Doc, welcome. Just before now, during the week, you shared an article on this issue, and it was very key. And I would like you to maybe throw it into the light, what you meant by that article, not the real sense behind this xenophobic attack and issues and crises which we are seeing in South Africa.
Yeah, thank you once again for you guys and for the audience. Look, this Afrophobic attack has been recurring, again and time again since 1997. That was the first time, which in a very big magnitude. So. Originally people were talking about xenophobic attack against, African nationals. And particularly there are some foreign nationals alongside. But recently what we identified, this is not purely a xenophobic things, because we have to correct also the wording. Wording matters in a big way, Xenophobia means someone is from outside. That's particularly when we say from outside of the continent. So we have to craft our narrative in a very particular manner. Similarly, with this one in South Africa, usually they use a foreigner, the word foreigner. As you know, foreigner is someone out of your continent. It cannot be, a Gambian cannot be a foreigner for Senegalese, or a Nigerian cannot be a foreigner for Ghanaians. We all are Africans. So that is a perception. And the third misunderstood word is diaspora. This is, we are using it, in academic, African diaspora in Kenya or South Africa or Nigeria, which it doesn't make sense to me. A diaspora is someone out of its shore. That means if you are in Europe, yeah, you can be a diaspora. If you are in America, you can be a diaspora. But within the continent, it can't be defined as a diaspora. So these are the three terminology we have to re-examine in a particular manner.
Okay, Doctor, let me
above and over, these things, the South African situation, it should be, seen in a different manner. That's what all about that op-ed. Yeah.
Okay, Doctor, let me come in here, Doctor. This very perspective you've shared about a Nigerian not being a foreigner in, say, Ghana or even in Durban or Pretoria, as the case may be. How pervasive is this understanding, first of all, even among government cycles, and then even among the citizens of the continent? How entrenched do you think this understanding is? Because for me, it sounds very, very good, and which it's, should be the situation. But how pervasive do you think this understanding is that as far as you're an African within Africa, you're not a foreigner?
That's a very crucial question. Remember, the post-colonial era in Africa identity is a big challenge throughout the continent. Who is an African? That is the most important issue which we have to debunk. But we have a very limited time, so I don't want to go to the deeper side of identity. Identity was my first book in 2022 because the post-colonial Africa was challenging within the nation in the broader Pan-African project. Identity is a big issue. So these are what we have to develop. But particularly to this case, what happened is whoever is coming outside of South Africa, they were labeling, foreign. But let me give you a context. Since the formation of OAU and consecutively, afterwards, after 10 years, maybe 20 years, I think, the formation of this AU, one of the things is just to identify, identity throughout the continent. So the Constitutive Act clearly states that an Africa is the one which is born and raised in the continent. That is particularly so. People, they have to go and refer the Constitutive Act of the African Union. So second, the African Union particularly, the ultimate goal is just to create one economic and political society. What does it mean is that is we have to have a common citizenship across the continent. So this is the way we have to understand. Yes, it's widespread and everybody understands that narrative. I can say it's not. People are not promoting such idea, and sovereignty become a big contestation for that. So the paradox also within the document of Constitutive Act and the previous OAU Act, that was the challenge which we couldn't able to promote our African identity. That's a critical challenge, and it is manifesting in a several area. One of which is South Africa, which has been shown as the Afrophobic attack in recent months. Yeah.
All right, Prof. Let me cross over to Accra and bring on board Honorable Ken. When we talk about repatriation, we've seen Nigeria, we've seen Ghana making the move, and other countries issuing safety statements to their citizens or their nationals in South Africa. How bad is this affecting bilateral relations? When countries like Ghana, Nigeria are pulling over 300 and 130 people from these countries, how bad can that get, and what does it mean for this African unity which we are talking about? Honorable Ken, this is for you. Please unmute, Honorable Ken.
Sorry. Yes. Thank you. I'm saying that before I go to my main question, I think I want to start with Prof on the identity definition. And I think that I made that in my earlier submission. It's very, very important. That is what is missing in our continent and bringing us together to see ourselves as one people. Back to the issue of affecting bilateral relations. Look, it is very, very troubling. I've had very prominent people, some people on the media and social media, requesting other African countries to also start attacking South African nationals, South African companies. I've had prominent people from Nigeria speak on that. I've had even legislators here in this country.
Even senators in Nigeria.
Yes, and MPs here in Ghana as well, and former ministers and former state people. And when you have such high-profile people talk like that, it is a very troubling signal. Because yes, they feel for their brothers and sisters, who are being treated that way. And social media is bringing all this very horrible scenes, and it's unregulated, and everybody is seeing it. The children are watching it, the adults, everybody is watching it. And so for me, it is very alarming. And it is very troubling to the integration that we all seek. We had a president, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, who championed African unity. And he's a symbol of bringing Africa together. And he had talked about the total liberation of the African continent, being all of us coming together as one people. But if we have these horrible scenes showing in our medias, traditional media, non-traditional media, it sent a certain impression and a certain signal to the other people. And you know that all manner of people, insurgents, people who benefit from disruptions, opposition political parties, and all manner of people would want to take political or some form of advantage from the situation happening. And that can lead to a breakdown of the integration and bilateral relations. And so for me, the earlier the South African government cooperates with the AU and other bloc institutions to curb this. We recently heard of they being cut off electricity because their neighboring border countries are also worried that their citizens...
breaking the voice.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Honorable. I think Prof wasn't hearing you, but I'm sure it's okay. Let me cross over to Prof Imo, because the bulk of this conversation is anchored on the efforts towards integration and unification of Africa. And like Honorable Kenneth mentioned, we've had leaders, African leaders like Kwame Nkrumah, who spearheaded these efforts. And at that time, when they speak, even from their wordings, you will know that they are speaking as Africans. Presently, you hardly hear any leader from anywhere that talk in such, from such position where they largely everybody speak from their own country's perspective. Now, Prof, where do we start this talk of unification from? Because like Honorable Daniel threw in again, you have social media playing a major role now, where a lot of comments are thrown into the foray, and you have different perspectives clashing and all of that. Where do we begin the conversation for African integration and unification? Prof.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you
clearly.
All right. The other connection is disconnected. Anyways, thank you so much. Look, I think I'm double connected. Yeah.
You're connected. Go ahead, Prof.
Yeah. There is an echo.
Okay. Just unmute your mic, and every other person, please mute your microphones. Thank you. Please, Prof, go ahead.
Yeah. Look. One of the things which I'm proposing,
yes,
is just to have reconfiguration of our regional economic communities. That is a crucial part of it. Basically, it deals also with the identity, which is now making us difficult to reintegrate our continent, and they should go also based on indigenous knowledge system, not bringing or mimicking a European Union type of integration. So I always encourage United People of Africa, not United States of Africa, because we failed for a long time. United States of Africa, that gives only states is concerned and connected with, with each other. So we have to look, how we can bring, African people into the matrix. That is the most important aspect of it. Since 2014 till to date, that is my area of expertise, and that is what I had been publishing and writing on it. So the most important aspect at national level, at sub-regional level, the existing REX system, regional economic system, should be reconfigured again in a way to meet, to voice each and every individuals from every corner. To be honest, you and me, we are not, you and I, maybe, and other comrades in the same, are not represented directly to the African Union. And the current African Union is it's a gathering of head of state, not individual Africans. I had been, born and raised in Addis Ababa, and most Ethiopians, even in Addis, people, they don't know about African Union. let alone, far from there. So we have to inculcate these things in our curricula from elementary school up to tertiary education. We have to conscientize our people from Cairo to Cape Town, from Djibouti to Senegal. That is what we have to do. Every citizen should be conscious about Africanness, and that Africanness should have also a meaning for everybody.
All right.
There should be a trickle down benefit to be proud to be an African and also dignified throughout the world. That is not the case. That's what we have seen, this Afrophobia, xenophobia around the world.
Well, let me bring on board Kimani Maskani, who is joining us from Nairobi, and he's a Pan-African activist and advocate with the Africans Rising movement, and they have been advocating for a borderless Africa. Kimani, thank you so much for joining us on the program, and welcome to the show. How does this affect the borderless Africa call by your movement? Kimani, please unmute.
Sorry. Hi, Imo.
Yes.
Good morning. So, what this affects the movement, it emboldens it, because generally now we are able to see that the quest for a borderless Africa is not really an abstract idea. It's something that was intended and had been intended since historically. We do remember people like Kwame Nkrumah, who really insisted that Africa needed to come together as soon as we got our independence. But of course, that never happened. There were a lot of there were people who felt that the African unification should come slowly and it should not be hurried. But what you can see right now is that if we're able to push forward for a borderless Africa, then we're able to push the narrative for Africa much more clearly. And generally what we stand for is that Africans should not feel like foreigners in Africa, regardless of where they are. And that is the intention, because for us is to ensure that first the citizens themselves begin this push, because we can see how the different governments have dragged the process itself. And so we believe that once we have, if the people can see the quest for a borderless Africa from their heart, then it can start moving quite fast. Because generally what we know is that the borders themselves are not, they're artificial to Africa, and they've remained artificial since. And you could see that different communities, families are separated by them. And this is not something that we'd want to see moving forward. Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Kimani, thank you very much for this elaborate, explanation about African Rising. And as you know, we have a lot of Africans listening right now, and of course, a lot of Africans will continue to listen to this very broadcast even after this very moment. And a lot of people I know, I've spoken to colleagues, journalists, NGO people within the NGO and development space, and everybody has just been looking like there is no what would I call it, anchoring force to unify and bring people on board from different parts of the continent to continue to push for this very intention that you've clearly spelled out for African Rising, because it's about time that people of the continent, and not necessarily the governments alone, begin to speak in terms of the Africanness that we are all clamoring for. So what would you be your call to that conscientized African young person that is interested so much in advancing this conversation? Where would you ask them to look towards at this moment?
For me, for anyone who would want to propel this, the narrative itself, first is to speak about it. Post it on socials. Speak about it with friends. Speak about it in school. Hello?
Well, with you, go ahead.
Prof.
Yeah.
Prof. Kimano, please, can you mute your? Thank you. Kimani, please go ahead.
Yeah. So generally, what I'm saying is that it is to continue with the constitutionalization process. Make sure that all Africans are able to understand why a united Africa is better than the way we are right now. We in the NGO world we like calling it working in silos. But generally, it's making sure that the people themselves are able to understand this, and also to deal with the misinformation that comes with it. Some of the misinformation, including insecurity, saying that if we open up borders to other Africans, then insecurity is going to rise within our country, which is not really the case. Others are like, if we open up our borders, then we increase the chances of disease outbreaks within our countries. And you can also see what's been happening in South Africa, where what you're calling it Afrophobia, where increasingly we are seeing that Africans are being targeted for just being African. So I think generally it's to re-educate the African mind to know that these borders themselves are there not really to keep us united or to keep us in progress, but keep us under a certain control. So once we have Africans understand this, so generally we need to put all these also within our curricula in schools. Let people understand where Africa has come from and where these borders have been drawn, because as we move, we have generations that don't seem to understand or do not have that connection with colonialism and how it happened and the reason why the borders exist in the first place. So a lot of conscientization is needed, a lot of re-education of the African mind, and also a lot of push for our African governments to especially ratify the protocols.
Well, let me take this your last comment to Dr. Saifa there in South Africa. Do you think the South African nationals or citizens will want to understand this point that Kimani has raised? Dr. Africano, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. Yeah, to a large extent, South Africans. Are you listening?
Yes, we can hear you.
Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, Prof. Go ahead, please.
To a large extent, South Africans, ordinary South African, mostly, I can say, 70 and above, they are mostly conscientized people, unlike the rest of Africa. Disgruntled, maybe a few, I don't know, 2-3%, maybe 5% of the population who like to create, havoc in order to benefit, out of it. And this is a gang movement, it's not, it doesn't represent the entire nation. So for me, South Africans are, in a better position to understand, the African project. Of course, here and there is a kind of narrative that's saying, we are the living standard and so many aspects. So for me, I don't want to label that South Africans are generally Afrophobic. There are very few groups. So it can be correctable. And the South African government also, it has a capability to control such kind of things. That's my take. Yeah. Thanks.
Usman.
Okay, I think I would like to go to Honorable Kenneth because as Imo had asked you earlier, you have Ghana, you have Nigeria already issuing advisories to their citizens. South Africa, also you have very high-profile people within Nigeria speaking in very strong terms against what is happening in South Africa to other Africans living there. But is this? I mean, because we are almost rounding up the program now, so I will be asking you, beyond just these, statements that are segregated here and there, what stronger, stance can individual countries take to ensure that the South African government is compelled to take action at this moment?
Yes, like I did indicate, once I think that there should be some very important emergency Security Council meeting of the African Union, and to outline some roadmap. It is important to be fair and to give the South African government some room, but those roadmaps must come with timelines. And like I did mention earlier on, these timelines, if these roadmaps are not adhered to, then there have to be some strict sanctions. And like I did indicate, look, one of the major issues, again, that sometimes do not force us as government is that Africa, by ourselves, the percentage of trading among ourselves is very low. Because we don't trade among ourselves, we may not even look at the binding or the reasons why it is important to keep some of these things at a very early stage. Trading among African countries is about 15 to 16% among ourselves, whilst we do about 60% trading with Europeans. So if something is affecting our other African countries, there is no binding, or some kind of pressure to make sure that these does not affect relations. Because at the end of the day, we are much concerned if it's going to affect trade relations, it's going to affect the economy in a certain way. So for me, I think that beyond this, governments must also make it a point to make sure that we are increasing the trade among Africans. If we are able to do that, it would indirectly curb some of these things, because then whilst we are trading among ourselves, the suggestion from Dr. Kimani and Prof. Saif already would come in terms of reorientation, in terms of education. And I think that we need to take the younger ones. Like you said, there is no more colonialism effect within this Gen Z population. They do not even understand what the African continent has gone through. It's all about modern trends and what is happening. It's all about fintech, technology, and all this social media space. So they may not be able to, identify themselves as Africans, as one people, because there's no one force that is pulling us together, which did earlier on, during the colonial eras. So it's important that trade becomes a new way of binding ourselves together. And once we actively establish trade routes, trade lines, then the new generation, the youth of Africans will begin to see that it is beneficial to treat ourselves with dignity, to accommodate each other, and to see ourselves as one people. And some of these attacks is going to come down, because government then would know that should they not curb these things, it's going to affect the economy and trade relationships.
Indeed. As Usman mentioned, as we say goodbye on the show, last question now to Prof. Saif. I mean, if African countries begin pulling their citizens out of fellow African states, what does that mean for the future of African unity, which we have been clamoring for?
Thanks. I think there's still widely alive the African feature of integration in a broader sense. The only challenge we have is the implementation and just taking track, to the indigenous governance mechanism. Otherwise, in the heart of many Africans, the Africa which we are looking or we're inspiring is still alive and kicking, and in many of us. So that's why we're breathing, we're writing, we're provoking ideas throughout the continent as much as possible. And your show is one of the example. And you are the young people, and you are taking this initiative just to take forward. This is, for me, it gives me a hope. This Africa is still alive. This Africa the Africa we want is pretty much well kicking everywhere. Yeah, that's what I would like to say. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you very much, Prof. And we want to hear your last words, Mr. Kimani. Mr. Kimani?
Yes, thank you. From the words of Prof, I think
within the next 60 seconds, please.
Oh yeah, sure. From the words of Prof, I think it takes a lot of work, but mainly it's focus and also remaining consistent. It's piecemeal. The movement that are happening right now, the lifting of visa restrictions by different countries for other countries is quite commendable, but it's work that also needs to be continued more at the continental level. So for me, it's the AU needs to do a bit more in terms of pushing for the ratification of the free movement protocol, which will give way to it will expand trade routes for Africans and for young Africans. So it's a good step forward if it was going to happen. And we really hope that that's the South African issue is a minor setback, and that we're going to get back to the Africa towards the Africa we want, the future of Africa we want. Yeah.
Imo.
Indeed, thank you so much, Kimani, for that closing speech. I want to thank you so much for your participation, Dr. Safety Africano there in South Africa, Kimani Maskani in Nairobi, and of course, Honorable Daniel Nana Adu Kenneth in Ghana. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being a part of the program.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
All right, it's been an insightful 90 minutes, as we promised. From the economic ladders, we need to climb to social barriers. We must break down. The message is clear. Africa moves forward only when every citizen is protected and empowered. Usman.
Absolutely, Imo. I can't agree less. If you missed any part of these discussions, you can catch the replay on our website at wadr.org or watch the full video on our YouTube and Facebook pages. We want to hear from you. Keep the comments coming on our social media handles. I am Usman Umar in Abuja.
And I am Imo Edet here in Dakar. Stay safe, stay informed, and stay united. Coming up next is a midday news with Augustine Coley. Goodbye.